Good morning, happy Saturday, and welcome to the final day of the 5th annual Be Well STL Boot Camp, brought to you by St. Louis Magazine and Missouri Baptist Medical Center. We are thrilled all of you are spending part of your Saturday with all of us. My name is Laura Hediger, and I'm an anchor on News 4 This Morning on KMOV, and also one of the hosts of Great Day St. Louis, also on KMOV, and I'm so pumped to be with all of you today. But I'm also really excited to hear from our amazing panel of local health and fitness experts in St. Louis. So without further ado, St. Louis friends, let's go ahead and meet the panel. You see all of them up here. We are going to start with Dr. Katie Boyd. Katie is a clinical psychologist with a private practice located in Frontenac, and she provides therapy for a variety of concerns with a special interest in treating anxiety. And I don't know about all of you, but we need that help more than ever, especially considering what we've been going through over the last few months. We also have Colin Walsh with us this morning. He is the head athletic performance coach at D1 Training. So excited to hear from him because so many gyms have now reopened in our area. And I know many of you are itching to get back out there and just start a new fitness journey. And then we also have Allison Lesko. I'm so excited to hear from her because she is a registered and licensed dietitian and creator of Fit Flavors Nutrition Counseling Program. And I love Fit Flavors and I hate cooking. So thank you, Allison, for everything you do for making my life, and I know the lives of thousands of other St. Louisans, a little bit easier. So a few ground rules before we get started. We do want to hear from all of you. It is so important that we do have a chance to answer some questions. So after we go through kind of a guided Q&A with our panelists, we will bring in a few of those questions. So don't hesitate to ask them in the chat feature. And this isn't going to be too crazy long. We will be done around 11:30 this morning, but I have a feeling we are going to learn a lot, and I'm not going to be the one to teach anyone anything. So let's get started right away. This first question is going to be to all three panelists. I have a feeling whenever people meet you and find out what you do, they have a lot of questions. So let's start with Allison. When people meet you and find out what you do, what is usually the first thing they ask you?
Well, when people meet me and they say, oh my gosh, you're a nutritionist, you're a dietitian, a lot of them love to tell me everything they ate and tell me about their health journey. And I love chatting with all of you guys about that. Typically, the first questions that come up, a lot of people say, you know, if I know a friend that's doing a trendy diet, what do you think about it? And so I'm always, you know, hearing about the upcoming diets, no matter how big or small they are. And so the biggest tip that I can give you guys is, you know, if a big diet, a new diet comes in and you'll see they'll come and they'll go. If it's new and we haven't learned anything before from it, it might be too good to be true. So, you know, we've done a lot of research for many years on wholesome eating and what to eat that's going to nourish our body. And so a lot of that information is backed by so much science that a lot of the trends, they're going to pass.
Colin, let's bring you into this conversation. When people find out what you do, inevitably, what's one of the first things they ask you?
Yeah, really similar to Allison. They're excited and do share just a brief history of what they've been going through and some of the goals that they've maybe been trying to accomplish for whatever length of time. And so I always encourage and listen to them, but make sure that they start with a small goal. I think, you know, we see these new exciting things, and Allison, I feel like I'm repeating everything you said. Other things, and we just want to do the most complex thing that we've seen on social media or whatever that case might be. And so kind of what we do here at D1 is we tie in some of the smaller approaches, the easier movements. We get to know those people, we go through screens, and we make sure that you guys move efficiently, that you're supported and you have an accountability in a community. So again, I'll repeat, start small and one step at a time is the best way you guys can go about it.
And Dr. Katie Boyd, when people find out what you do, what do they ask you?
So when people find out I'm a psychologist, I get a mixed reaction. I can get anything from, well, I'm not going to talk anymore, to, are you analyzing me? Or, oh, that's really interesting. Let me tell you about this person that I know and some of the things that they have, and they want to pick my brain. So it's pretty funny sometimes, the reactions that I can get.
And I have a feeling all of you get very interesting stories too. Maybe a little too much information right off the bat. But Dr. Katie, I do want to stick with you because let's be honest, we have been through a lot over the last few months. So how are the current circumstances impacting people mentally and emotionally? And beyond that, I think we've heard a lot of talk that we are on the brink of a mental health crisis. Mm-hmm. Would you agree?
Yes, I would agree with that. We have faced multiple crises all at the same time, from the pandemic to the economic downturn to the fight for racial equality. And all of these stressors hitting at the same time is a lot to handle and is having an impact on people's mental well-being. If you take the pandemic alone, for example, it presented numerous stressors that hit all at the same time, from worry about our physical health and safety to social isolation, job loss and financial stress, uncertainty about the future, adjusting to working from home and having to homeschool children, and not to mention the trauma that the frontline and essential workers were facing. So all of those stressors hit at the same time when we had limited access to the typical things that we might do to manage stress. So somebody might be able to handle the stress of a job loss, for example, if they're able to hang out with their friends and family for support or go to the gym and work out. So the combination of the increased stressors without the ability to do the things we normally do to manage stress is really having an impact on people's mental well-being, unfortunately. And again, that's just the pandemic. When you add on the economic stress and the stress about the fight for racial equality, it's almost too much to process. And we're seeing an increase in mental health symptoms like anxiety and depression as a result.
And I'm so glad you mentioned the fact that we don't have those outlets, because I want to move in to Colin with this next question. During this uncertain time, we have lost motivation to work out because so many gyms have been closed too, and we haven't exactly had the best weather over the last 3 months consistently. So how do you motivate people to work out? And also, what advice do you have for people who have very limited time?
Yeah, two really good questions. I think I'll start kind of with that motivation piece. Speaking to the crisis that we're in, I think there's a huge benefit in the outlet of exercise and the benefits that we can gain from just moving. And that doesn't have to be anything more than a walk, right? I think, whether you have a dog or a family, just being able to go out. I know when my family first started in the beginning of the pandemic, it felt so good to move around and see so many neighbors who we may have never met before. And that, again, gives you kind of that outlet and just a little breath of fresh air to see people out and about. And it can do a lot for you, whether you really can recognize or create a tangible outcome from it. So the motivation is definitely difficult, but I think there's so much to gain, especially right now, to moving around, even if that's just stretching or walking.
And Allison, I want to bring you into this conversation because for me personally, I'll scroll through Facebook, I'll go through Instagram, and over the last few months, I've seen so many amazing food creations because people have had more time and they've found comfort in eating and cooking. So what would you say is the best thing for people to eat? But on the other end of it, what's the worst thing that people can eat?
Yeah, absolutely. I love that we've all been getting in our kitchens a little bit more. You see things on social media like people have been making bread and they've been making more dinners, and they've just been really slowing down and taking that time to cook. So I absolutely love that. But to answer your question, what is the best thing that you could eat? I think, a lot of us have been in vacation mode where we've been eating foods that we wouldn't typically eat all the time. We've been drinking a little bit more, maybe during the work days when we wouldn't have done that before. And so it's very easy for that weight gain to occur this time, throughout this time. So really just bringing it back to the basics. sticking with wholesome food that is going to provide you good fuel for the body. And what I mean for that is, minimal ingredients. How many ingredients are in chicken breast? 1. How many ingredients are in vegetables? 1. How many ingredients are in broccoli? So if we're bringing it back to the basics and using real food and fuel, we're going to have better energy. We're going to really just have that energy to want to get back into the gym and get moving again. And so it's choosing those wholesome ingredients, cooking with fresh, real food. Another thing, just getting back into a routine too. That's a little bit challenging for people because a lot of us are working from home now. So we tend to kind of wake up a little later and go to bed a little later. If you can really start waking up at the same time, even if you're not going into work exactly the same time that you would have, even if you're not leaving your house, really trying to adhere to a good schedule is going to allow you to develop and continue adhering to those good hunger cues that are at appropriate meal times.
Colin, I want to go back to you because once we do have our diets figured out, how many times should someone work out in a week, and also for how long?
Yeah, so I think it's a very individualized response to that. And we have so many people from, different backgrounds, whether that's they've trained before or maybe they've never trained before. They've done CrossFit or they've done Pilates. So I think sticking to your gut and really listening to your body is going to be your best cue. Sometimes, again, like we mentioned in the beginning, small is better. So starting out in the first stride, hitting twice a week is a really, really good start. And then just kind of accommodating and learning how your body will adapt to that, and being able to add another day or another 30 minutes to those workouts can really pay off in the long run. So I think it varies from person to person, but to start out small again.
Mm-hmm. And then Dr. Katie, once we do have our diets figured out, we're getting into a fitness routine, we sometimes tell ourselves, okay, we should feel all right. And then when we really do check in with ourselves mentally and emotionally, we still just feel a little off. So my question for you is, how does one know if what they are feeling is typical or a sign of more of a problem? And also, what would be the signs to indicate that seeking help may be necessary?
Right. So there is a level of an emotional response to all that's happening that is within a normal range, right? We're dealing with a lot of stressors, and things like sadness or anger or anxiety, worry about the future. During quarantine, there was a lot of boredom and low motivation, as you mentioned. Those would all be things that would be considered within the normal range and something that maybe we've all experienced at some point or another throughout this. Signs that would be an indication of more of a problem would be any significant changes in appetite, trouble sleeping that lasts more than a night or two, excessive anxiety or panic attacks, feelings of hopelessness, the thought that things won't get better, any substance misuse, or certainly any suicidal thoughts. Those sorts of symptoms would be an indication that it's more than a typical response that's happening, and maybe seeking help from a professional would be beneficial.
And Dr. Katie, when you say seeking help from a professional, would you suggest just Googling it, or how do we come in contact with someone to help us?
Sure. There are a number of ways. Some people get a word of mouth referral from friends or family that they know and trust. A lot of people want to use their insurance. And so if they're needing to go to someone that accepts their insurance, they can look on their insurance website to find out a list of in-network providers. And then certainly Google searches. I definitely recommend for people to do a lot of research and to work to find someone that you feel is a good fit for you. And sometimes that looks like going to a couple of first appointments with different therapists to find the one that you feel is the right fit for you.
And I want to stay on this topic of seeking help and bring Colin back into it, because for people who have not worked out in a while, how would you suggest helping them to get started?
You have to do some research again. And, you know, we come from a place where we know that we're not the answer for everybody. We want to help you guys find who that person is or what that gym or facility or club is. And so finding kind of what that stride and happiness is for you, it has to make sense. You can't go somewhere and train or work out and leave feeling disappointed, unaccomplished, inadequate. And that has a lot to do not only with the staff and the facility that you go to and the community that that place has, but then also how you feel when you leave. You have to feel accomplished. And sometimes you'll see a lot of people who say, I go to this gym and I go to that gym and I do 2-a-days sometimes. They're in a groove and they found the rhythm and they found the right pieces. And I think that that's the most important, is finding the people who are there to support you, who can also do that from a safe and professional manner, making sure that you have all the tools in your kit to make sure that you stay in that success.
And Allison, I loved what you said earlier about going to foods that have one ingredient. You look at a chicken breast, you're going to see chickens in it. So how do we make sure that we really are eating healthy all throughout the day?
Yeah, it's definitely choosing those fresh ingredients whenever possible, and really having a balance of nutrition on your plate. That's going to fill you up. That's going to make you feel satisfied so you're not mindlessly eating an hour later. And a balanced plate really is, you know, having those healthy fats like olive oil, avocado, salmon, all heart healthy. Choosing, you know, lean protein like chicken breast, turkey breast, those types of foods. And adding in that complex carb component. I know a lot of us are scared of that carb component, but when you're using, you know, whole grains like brown rice or even like a whole wheat pasta or a potato, that all in summary together is going to truly nourish you, where you feel satisfied and you aren't, again, reaching for some of those mindless eating snacks.
And as we approach lunchtime, thanks to Allison, I am now hungry and I'm craving same. That sounds amazing. Dr. Katie, I want to go over to you. Something that I've noticed being in the news, even just over the last few years, we've really started doing more stories about mental health. I think that's so important. But I think you would also agree there's still a stigma about it in our country. So what are some things that we can do to take care of our mental health and continue to advance this conversation where it's not so stigmatized?
Well, I think in terms of taking care of our mental health, that's going to look different for every individual. And it's important to honor your own needs and what you need each day. So that might be different from day to day, and it certainly will be different from person to person. But generally speaking, there are some things we can do to support mental health. Our physical exercise is definitely something that has benefits for us emotionally and mentally as well, not just physically. Connecting with family and friends. The quarantine had us very isolated, and reaching out and connecting with friends and family in whatever ways you feel comfortable is a great way to support mental health. Doing relaxation techniques or even meditation can be very good ways to reduce anxiety and support mood. Also limiting social media and paying attention to how much you're taking in terms of information. With the 24-hour news cycle and social media at our fingertips, it can be really easy to become overwhelmed with information. And so paying attention to how much you're taking in and be mindful of getting the information you need, but then unplugging and getting away from it as well can really help your mood. Also, something I've noticed is people have felt very feelings of guilt or down on themselves for not being able to get things done during this time. And it's really important to be kind to yourself and how you're talking to yourself during these trying times. A lot of, especially parents who are trying to manage homeschooling their children and working from home, they felt like they were failing in all areas. And it's important to remember that these are trying times, and it's okay to not be okay, not be at our best. And that, you know, cutting yourself some slack and being really gentle with the way you're talking to yourself is important.
I need to be better at that. That's for sure. Allison, I want to go back to you because you have learned a lot in your career as a dietitian. So what do you know now as a registered dietitian that you wish everybody knew?
I think the biggest thing to let you guys know is that it doesn't have to be nutrition in general. It doesn't have to be super complicated. We way overcomplicate things by creating all these diets that, you know, are for a short period of time that are very hard to adhere to. And a big rule of thumb, like if you are, you know, if you can almost, you can get to a point where you can't do that diet, that just means that that's not a lifestyle, and you're only able to adhere to something like that for a short period of time, so it's not sustainable. You are oftentimes, you know, not able to learn what the proper nutrition is, and so what happens is we yo-yo with our weight because we go back and forth with either being all on or all off with our nutrition. And if you're bringing it back to the basics and eating that balanced, you know, amount of nutrition on your plate, you're going to be at a healthier weight. You're going to feel good and have energy to do things like work out and take care of your kids and work.
And I love that we have such different professionals with us, but their messages are all very similar. And friends, so far we've been chatting for a little more than 20 minutes. So I'm going to get really awkward and get very close to the camera because I do want to check our chat feature just to see if we have any messages coming in. As I mentioned, we would love to see some. I'm not seeing any right now, but I could have totally done that wrong. So hopefully I didn't. We're going to check this one more time. Let's see, chat. So bring on the questions, friends. Colin, as we continue this conversation, so many of the gyms have opened up recently. And for anyone who, I guess we hit on this a little bit before, is thinking about starting something new, what other advice do you have for them who maybe are just a bit cautious right now about making that next step to going into an actual gym?
Man, that's a loaded question. It's a good one though. I think again, you need to be able to measure the people who are going to be leading you. I am an advocate, maybe biasly, for going somewhere where you're going to have a coach or an instructor, a trainer, whatever you guys might coin that, who can help you along that process, versus going to a setting that might have an open gym and you walk in and you're overwhelmed with equipment and people and TVs. And like we've talked about before, there are so many kind of outside distractions that it'll take from your presence and you being able to achieve what you went there to do. So I think to drive home, my answer is to find somebody, a facility that has the support in a coach or a trainer who is educated in a professional and has a great background that you guys should be able to ask those questions comfortably. And if you're not able to get the answers that you're looking for, I would probably recommend that's not the right place. So that's my answer.
Fantastic advice right there. And back to you, Dr. Katie. What would you like someone who is considering going to therapy to know?
I think that especially for those who are hesitant to reach out for help, it's important to remember that it's a sign of strength and not weakness to acknowledge your struggles and face them and to reach out for help. It can be nerve-wracking to make that first call and attend that first session, but those feelings are completely normal. And if you find a therapist that's a good fit for you, you will feel more comfortable. And again, as I mentioned earlier, it's a good idea to sort of shop around until you find someone that is a good fit.
I do want to jump in and check the chats one more time. So here we go. I'm still not seeing them. So hopefully panelists, you guys haven't noticed any, but if you have, you can definitely let me know what they are. We'd like for questions, as we do have a few more minutes here. And I guess throwing this out here to all of our panelists, this is going to be a very open-ended question, but how have you personally been doing over the last few months? Allison, how have you been?
I think it is in a whole new set of obstacles that we were not used to dealing with. So for myself, it was transferring all of my in-person consultations to virtual sessions. And I think that, what we've learned is that support during that time where we can talk through some of our habits with our nutrition, maybe how, our coping mechanisms with food, need to be altered into healthier practices. So it was a learning game for all of us, myself included.
Katie, how have you been over the last few months?
I would say it's definitely been an adjustment. I've had to shift all of my sessions from in-person to virtual as well. And I'm doing that from home instead of from my office. And so it has definitely been an adjustment to not be in person with my clients. But it's been surprising how well it is going, because missing that in-person interaction is really not too bad.
And Colin, how have you been doing?
I'm glad to hear that you guys have had a good experience and a learning one. I hope so many of you guys connect on that same page. I would say I do as well. Although, yes, a challenge, and I think maybe from a week-to-week basis, we had to learn and adapt and grow. It was a very beneficial time off to kind of refocus, do a self-check. And I also have a 18-month-old at home, so to be time with him was just amazing in those 3 months. So it was great.
Yeah, so basically Colin's not busy at all with that child at home. We did get a very important question from Joni, and I love this question because I have a grandma who has, I think, has gone through an emotional roller coaster through all of this. So Joni is asking, what is the best way to encourage our parents who are seniors and who really have been told to stay home, don't leave your house at all, to stay positive during this time? Katie, Dr. Katie, let's throw it out to you first on this.
Sure. I think that being able to connect in any ways that they can with sharing photos of family or phone calls, FaceTime if they're capable of doing the technology, is a very important way to stay connected even though they're isolated. The virtual connection, again, isn't quite the same as in person, but it's better than nothing at all. And feeling connected with our family and friends is a very important part of staying mentally healthy.
And Allison, also thinking of my grandma, I know she used to enjoy going to the grocery store and picking out her own foods. And some seniors have kind of felt a loss of control on that too. So what would you say to maybe an older child with an older parent who is now doing all the grocery shopping for that parent?
That can be challenging. You can order online. A lot of people have been getting their groceries online and getting that delivered. And I think a good way to fill your time during this quarantine is to try a new thing to cook. Try a new recipe that maybe you haven't taken the time to in the past. Now, a lot of, family members are dropping off baked, foods for their family. Fit Flavors does delivery as well. So if they're not, comfortable getting in the kitchen, or maybe their skills aren't as sharp as they used to be, you can get meals that are fully cooked and balanced, just like the way that we've kind of chatted today, delivered right to their door. I've actually sent some to my grandparents.
And Colin, I know I've had this conversation with my soon-to-be mother-in-law. She has hated that tracks have been closed, so she hasn't been able to go for her walks on tracks like she enjoys. How would you encourage our elderly viewers and friends out there to stay motivated to stay physically fit?
Yeah, definitely a tough obstacle to overcome. But again, back to the root is just to be really simple, and it's really hard, I know, for a lot of people in that senior age to stay motivated or feel like it's worth their time. But sitting and standing up from a chair, and doing a handful of reps. Stretching is going to be key for them. I've taken on a practice of mobility. So what I like to tell people is to train mobility the amount equal to the first number of your age. So if you are 30, you should be training, three days a week mobility. Those durations of time can be anywhere from 10 to 30 minutes, but some is better than none. So
that's interesting. I like that. And you make it easy to understand. We are now right at 11:30, so we promised we wouldn't take up your entire morning, but the 30 minutes you all spent with us, I learned a lot, so I hope all of you did too. And of course, a huge thank you to all of our panelists today, Dr. Katie Boyd, also Colin Walsh, and then Allison Lesko, fantastic professionals in the St. Louis area, all dedicated to making sure we can be well and flat out be better. And something that is really cool about what we did today is it's going to continue, because even though we did this live, it will remain where other people can watch it. So maybe if you learn something and you think a friend would learn something from this panel, definitely show them this video. So of course, thank you to each and every one of you who did watch this live. And for those of you who are watching maybe later on Saturday, tomorrow, Sunday, Monday, whenever it is, we do hope you were able to learn something. So for Dr. Katie, also Colin and Allison, I hope they all gave you some things to think about as you continue just being better. So finally, thank you for being part of the 5th annual Be Well STL Boot Camp, brought to you by St. Louis Magazine and also Missouri Baptist Medical Center. For all of you, we hope you guys have a great day, St. Louis, and be well.